You're about to play an unfinished level from The Last of Us Part 2.
We use our workbench a lot to make a lot of things that kill and maim and hurt people. Here, we had the silly idea of using the same feel, harkening back to the same animations, using the exact same UI to instead fix a drink. Like the workbench, you could pick your base, and then you could add something to it. And at the time, we had some different reactions from Ellie based on how strong you chose to make the drink. Something we wanted to prototype though, before it got cut, was picking up some ingredients around to add, like a lime or maybe a bottle of someone's favorite whiskey or salt, like you were earning upgrades. We also toyed with having Ellie carry around the drink you made and occasionally sip it, psyching herself up to go talk to Dina inside because she's nervous. It got too noodly though, because she would need to keep placing it somewhere before she did anything, so it would have ended up more trouble than it was worth.
In this second deleted level, which is an extended sequence of the sewers in Seattle, this comes on the heels of where Ellie goes into a building and she survives an attack by stalkers and gets thrown out of the window and gets swept away by the current, and then we cut this section that used to be there in the final game. Now you will get to play it. So this was a way to get a bit more interesting puzzles, interesting traversal, figure out how Ellie can navigate the sewers with the fighting current. Ultimately, with a lot of these levels and these sequences, the reason why we cut them were for pacing purposes. But here it is for you in this very kind of raw form that part of it will feel finished, parts of it will feel like assets are missing as far as audio, animation won't be final, but it's a glimpse into what a game looks like when it's months away from finishing. Enjoy.
This level, internally known as Nora, was quite long in duration as we had to make Ellie traverse a far distance to the opposite side of downtown Seattle. The sewer section was originally longer than what we released the game with, approximately 10 minutes more. This was one of the few areas of the game that used water flow as part of a traversal puzzle. The player has to go upstream to use the current to get to the platform to reach the other side. We mostly cut this mechanic game-wide, however it remained in essence in the section swimming to the aquarium as Ellie when you were avoiding the waves. When players reach the doorway and enter into the room, they're faced with a dead end. The real reason for this dead end room is that on the reversal, when exiting back out of the doorway, players are faced with the route onwards. A pipe that they'd not been able to see when they were swept past it on the way in, and something that was hidden from view when on the side platforms. The intention here being that the only option is to go off the standard path in order to search for a way out. Throughout the rest of the level, we also used light to indicate to the player that they were heading in the right direction. At each turn, however, we blocked the direct route forward. Players would know that they just have to keep finding alternative paths, promoting those feelings of being desperate and trapped. We slowly introduced the player to consider climbing into smaller pipes and crouching in these tight spaces. This is to slowly build up to and encourage the player to climb into such a small pipe that they'll have to be crawling on their stomach, which is something that the player previously may not have recognised as a playable space, let alone the desired route they need to take. We added a tiny space just to reward the player's exploration with a pickup item, and we made sure it was something that made sense that you'd find in this area. A canister and all the garbage that had been washed into the sewers from the surface. We loved the idea of making Ellie prone through a tiny dirty pipe in order to get out, as it was a great opportunity to use our prone mechanic. A unique camera setup was created to support crawling in these pipes, as the standard prone camera is much higher above the player. We also created custom collision in order for Ellie to manoeuvre in these tight spaces easily. Initially, the oblong collision capsule around her character caused issues crawling around corners. We put extra effort into the custom corner collision so the movement experience is as smooth as the main game.
Putain. Allez. C'est pas le moment de craquer, Ellie.
In order for the player to feel cramped, claustrophobic and desperate, we'd been enforcing the traversal mechanics that allow for a tight environment which promote these feelings. We introduced the use of the squeeze through so that we can keep the player feeling enclosed and tight, but without repeating the same geometry. Here we change from low ceilings with wider walls to high ceilings and tight walls to change up the spatial pacing and keep the level from repeating
Ce
itself.
serait vraiment la merde de crever ici.
Originally, we had the water line much higher here, so players had to swim through this tight tunnel. However, from watching user test feedback, it was occasionally causing people to discount the route entirely and turn back on themselves. So to avoid any risk of this happening in the final game, we present a lower water level so the tunnel is easy to see and commit to using. As we surface from the water and over the crest of the slope, we reveal what is further in this tunnel. A clicker that has sprouted and the fungus has grown on the sides of the pipe. It was great to see people who user tested this area becoming increasingly withdraw the player towards this pipe, as it is seemingly the route out of the tight space. Fairly soon it is obvious that this path is blocked. If the player goes all the way up to the bars that block the path, they are rewarded with a pickup, so this journey doesn't feel wasted. It is important to encourage the player to try to progress along this path so that they would subtly be thinking of progress in this direction. We hint to the player that there is a bigger, new space beyond this pipe by showing the player the waterfall. This helps players consider the other route when they don't know how far the tunnel is or whether they'd make it.
Wesh, la scène elle est incroyable avec Joël. Ils ont dû cette partie de. Ils auraient dû vraiment la laisser, ils auraient pas dû supprimer. C'est ça, fait ce tour là. Alors on voit que c'est une version qui a pas été finie.
For the final section, we eventually opened you out into a wider area as you traverse through such tight spaces leading up to this. So changing the environmental pacing makes it begin to feel like we're coming to the end of Ellie's ordeal. An earlier iteration used the current that we'd shown at the start was slightly tougher. This is the first time we get to see stalkers that are embedded into the walls. So this optional room is a nice little early extra that the player gets to explore. We also use the pickups to lure players over to be close enough to trigger. This caused quite a few jump scares with user testers who played our game before its release.
Ah, cool.
This is the first time we get to see stalkers that are embedded into the walls. So this optional room is a nice little early extra that the player gets if they explore. We also use the pickups to lure players over to be close enough to trigger the stalker's attack. This caused quite a few jump scares with user testers. For the final section, we eventually opened you out into a wider area as you traverse through such tight spaces leading up to this. So changing the environmental pacing makes it begin to feel like Ellie's ordeal. An earlier iteration, this is the first time we get to see stalkers that are embedded into the walls. So this optional room is a nice little early extra that the player gets if they explore. We also use the pickups to lure players over to be close enough to trigger the stalker's attack. This caused quite a few jump scares with user testers who played our game before its release.
Là, faut que je trouve un truc pour monter là. Mais né. Un truc pour monter. Ah, je vais faire le tour au pire.
Using this pipe was retained in the iteration we shipped with, as it's the last of the extreme methods Ellie has to undergo in order to escape the sewers, and what she will go through in her pursuit of revenge. The last ladder climb is quite lengthy, and although we could have trimmed it down to a shorter climb, we liked how this last segment of the journey built anticipation for whether there was success at the top or not after all you've been through. Ultimately, the ladder exits out into the subway station, which is how it connects in the final game. Ellie then has to find her way to the hospital from here, crossing paths with the scars for the first time.
Merde, j'aurais dû enlever vidéo d'introduction. Bah ouais, j'ai déjà vu. Ça sert à rien.
For this third and final deleted level, what we call the boar hunt sequence, this was a sequence pretty late in the game. It was right after the whole Seattle Abby sequence where Abby spares Ellie. And then we wanted to come back into Ellie's story. Keep it a bit mysterious of how much time has passed, where is Ellie now? So we're coming in on Ellie and she's following a trail of blood. And we wanted to mirror in a way the deer hunt sequence from the first game, but this time do it with a boar. And there's something with Ellie that now she can't let go of this violence. She's pursuing it even against this innocent animal. This was another opportunity to show how the violence that Ellie has experienced, the violence that she witnessed being afflicted onto Joel, is still sticking with her, and she's still experiencing these PTSD moments. This was a sequence that was pretty far along and was cut pretty late in production. Parts of it are still really rough, but the gameplay, the building blocks were all there. I think you'll have fun to see, like, again, a rough, unfinished sequence that you can play. You can see all the way to the end, and including a cinematic that we end up cutting. And the remnants of the sequence ended up being mentioned in Ellie's journal. So this part of the story that we developed still made its way into the game as kind of optional stuff that you could read about, but here you get to experience it. So as a reminder, this is pretty rough, months away from being finished, but you get to see it now.
Encore une fois, il manque des mois de travail. En gros, c'est quelques mois avant la sortie du jeu. Les passages qui sont pas encore finis, mais qui ont été supprimés. Sinon, ça va les graphismes pour un jeu qui a pas été fini.
So the boar hunt was one of the hardest levels for me to work on. It was a huge challenge with the systems that we had, and we kept trying, but it never felt quite right. Originally, the level happened after the Jackson Festival, which also got cut, but before Farm. Once the festival got cut, it became the prologue to Farm. The intended experience is that we jump in early iterations of the fight, it was more arena-like. The player slowly whittles down the boar's health. Ellie gets more visceral and more vicious. We get a little worried about her. As the boar gets weaker, more panicked, more feral, and we start feeling sympathetic to the boar was the hope. In all of these iterations, especially of these wider areas, it required custom AI and scripting to make sure it continued to feel organic as an animal, but we really needed it to do specific stuff. It needed to be able to close distances really, really quickly. It needed to charge to attack, but we wanted the feeling of hunting. We must have gone through
Ouais, sinon il parle trop, voilà.
6 iterations of the boar fight and all, and every
Il est où
single
Sanguille,
time
là?
it changed pretty drastically.
Elle vient de dire j'ai trouvé, il est où?
Phases where one was
J'ai trouvé?
all long range.
Moi je vois pas de sanglier là.
Another where you're getting close and you get the jump on it quite literally. You're
Là
jumping
je vois pas de
off a
sanglier.
rock to attack it. And then finally
trouvé.
we tried a bunch where you almost sort of go around a bunch of trailers and try and wrestle it.
C'est quoi ça? C'est les traces de sang d'un sanglier qu'elle vient de tirer. Il y a beaucoup de sang, مسكينة.
Since it's cramped, the boar feels larger.
واحد بالله. واحد بالله.
When it charges, it gets to us quickly.
Ah voilà, on voit
so
bien
we
que le jeu
must
n'a
be
pas
on
été
our
fini. Hein.
toes. This made it more aligned with Ellie's sort of hunting for trouble mindset.
Parti où ça l'œil? Wesh.
As well as
Wesh, imagine tu meurs par un sanglier, frère.
And could you get a shot off quickly enough so you could dodge out of the way? Or is the shot worth the cost after? It feels like a game.
Wesh. معشم.
Everything would likely be in shambles. The boar would burst through the back, and Ellie would follow it and finally end
Sur le
up to
camp, what
the
the
edge.
fuck? Quoi cette merde? C'est un balle que je lui ai mis. Vas-y viens.
C'est fini. Tu m'échapperas pas.
Wesh, il est trop dur à tuer ce sanglier. C'est sanglier Kodiak.
The boar kill was supposed to be anything but glorious, with the boar whimpering at the back of the gas station.
Mais non, j'étais sûr paradoxe entre Joël. Parallèle et tout, oh là là, incroyable. J'aurais dû laisser cette partie du jeu. Ça aurait été vraiment pète sa mère pour conclure. En fait, ils nous ont vraiment mis toute l'histoire de The Last of Us 2, quoi. Ambition d'histoire du studio. Non, il y a Red Dead d'abord. Abuse pas, c'est Red Dead. Ils aiment toujours. Après, c'est vrai que The Last of Us et Red Dead, c'est les deux jeux les plus ouf de l'histoire.
My hope is it's going to make the first game even greater.
That's the thing I love about the it's like it's all optimism. This is gonna be the game.
C'est
that
donc comme ça
I always
qu'on
dreamed
fonctionne
about
un jeu,
making.
incroyable.
Let's do something new. Let's take risks.
Ça a l'air simple
Let's
comme ça.
kill Joel right away. Let's just kill him.
Yeah, I was like, what? Yeah, let's f***ing do it.
You're gonna piss a lot of people off.
This scope on this game.
Pour moi, ils auraient pas dû tuer Joel.
I'm confident in the game if we finish it. I'll be frank, it's not looking great.
I'm feeling burned out. I can't crunch like I used to.
We started having these leaks.
It was
Wesh.
awful. There were a lot of days where I would just cry.
And
Putain, en
then
fait, c'est difficile
there's
comme boulot.
rumblings of this pandemic.
Are people going to want to play a game that takes place in a pandemic when there's a real pandemic?
Ça aurait été incroyable.
Ever going to finish this game?
Ça aurait été incroyable qu'ils fassent un The Last of Us sur la pandémie. Mais genre qui a rien à voir.
Marathon, it's not a sprint.
Je pense qu'ils devraient faire un jeu sur le Covid. Bon là ça
When we
passerait
come
quand même.
together, when we do this thing that people outside the city talk about, like this Naughty Dog magic, this is what it looks like.
Or Joel doesn't die. So then what happens is all of us become friends.
Putain, ça aurait été bien. Ah, c'est la scène où ils sont dans la salle et tout et que Joel se fait fracasser. Ah, ça aurait été bien et tout. Non mais ça aurait été impossible. Évidemment. Évidemment. On va tous les faire hein. Je rentabilise le jeu frérot. C'est quoi sa première bande annonce? J'ai jamais vu. De là. Ok, là on a du très très lourd là.
Through the valley of the shadow of death, and I fear no evil because I'm blind to it all. In my mind, my gun, they comfort me because I know I'll kill my enemies when they come.
Je l'ai super badass cette scène.
Goodness and mercy will follow me all the
Incroyable.
days of my life, and I will dwell on this earth forevermore. Said I walk beside the still waters and they restore my soul, but I can't walk on the path of the right because I'm wrong.
C'est une scène coupée avec Joël
I can't walk
ou Tomiski ça.
on the path of the right cause I'm wrong.
Ouais, elle a fait un carnage. Là.
What are you doing, kiddo?
Oh, c'est Joël.
You really gonna go through with this?
pense plutôt que c'est une scène coupée du jeu qu'une bande-annonce. Putain, ils en ont coupé beaucoup des scènes, hein.
Gonna find. And I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
Incroyable. Ah, c'était bien une bande-annonce en fait. Mais ouais. Si c'était la première bande-annonce, putain qu'elle était incroyable. 2016 est sorti cette bande-annonce. Sans que le jeu est sorti en quoi 2020. Wesh. Ah, c'est un podcast.
Recording. Okay, I think we're good. First of all, I'm going to start by asking you questions.
Oh crap. Okay.
Attends,
Have you
mais
finished the game?
Have you played it yet?
sur 1 heure
Are
sans
you
podcast.
done with it? Did you complete it? Are you?
Wait, have
Et
you
sauf
played
qu'en
it?
I hope
fait,
you play it till
y
the
a
end
pas les
and let us
sous-titres.
know.
You've played the whole game.
I finished it last night,
Et
or like 2 a.m.
Oh, you did?
So I probably should have loaded that. I clocked a little under 30, I think, when all was said and told.
Yeah.
attends frérot, y a pas les sous-titres, y a rien. Je suis bilingue moi. Qu'est-ce que tu me racontes là?
When we first meet Ellie in Jackson, she's 19.
Oh, je suis bilingue
She's
moi.
going out on patrols. She is a little bit more confident in
Ah
who
ouais,
she
vas-y, ils ont
is.
pas pensé au français, oh là. Ouais, bah nique sa mère. Et ils ont fait plein de podcasts, ils ont fait 4 podcasts de 1 heure, frère.
I cling on to this Robert McKee quote, which is, people often ask, like, what is the responsibility of a writer? Is it to tell morally just stories? Is it to do fan service? Is it to do, whatever those things are? He's like, no.
Moi j'ai pas personne. Merde, j'ai oublié de mettre le jeu en anglais, putain.